The genre of non-narrative films includes a wide variety that utilizes style and structure to create a unique experience for the viewer. Koyaanisqasti is a film that brings this to the extreme. Without a single line of dialogue spoken, the film is still able to tell a vivid story. One of the ways it is able to do this is through the use of its distinctive style. Categorizing the style of film is not a straightforward process, as there are many elements of film that contribute to its style. To better identify the specific stylistic choices used to create the aesthetic experience, the aspects of the film can be separated into four categories: mise-en-scène, editing, cinematography, and sound. In film, mise-en-scène constitutes everything that lies within the frame. This can include lighting, the arrangement of subjects, and costumes, to name a few. For Koyaanisqasti, there are several motifs that can be observed within its mise-en-scène. One of these being how human faces are framed throughout the film. Consistently, the subjects' faces in Koyaanisqasti are centered in the middle of the frame, with subjects making eye contact with the camera. Often, the sullen stare is offset by a dynamic background behind the subject. Conversely, the way buildings are framed throughout the film is far different from how faces are. While the face and eyes are always easily distinguishable, buildings are framed so abstractly, so much so that at times it is hard to understand where one building starts and the other ends. Personally, I believe this stylistic choice was made in order to highlight the personal connection from human to human, while also making clear that while buildings are made by man, they are still very much obscured to the nature of man. Of all of the four categories of style within Koyaanisqasti, cinematography is used the most effectively. There are many motifs used in the cinematography that utilize a wide array of techniques, such as adjusting lens length and altering frame rate to create the unique style present in Koyaanisqasti. An example in the film of the stylistic cinematography is the way in which the frame rate is increased and decreased in order to create a certain effect. There are multiple shots within the film where the sequences of crowds have decreased frame rate, making the movement of the crowds flow much faster. Conversely, the frame rate is also increased in some shots to create this visual similar to slow motion. Another technique of cinematography present in Koyaanisqasti is the use of varying the lens lengths. Occasionally the film will use lenses with very high focal lengths in order to compress the visuals within the frame. Out of the four categories of style, editing is easily the most unnoticeable. We've become so used to modern film technique that stylistic editing can seem almost invisible. In Koyaanisqasti, we can see variance in editing, as sometimes a sequence will feature very long takes for a majority of the shot, and alternatively, there are many sequences that feature very short shot length with the assistance of many cuts. The use of sound is interesting in Koyaanisqasti as it is solely music, with the complete absence of any dialogue. This dependency on music really creates a unique experience as the music molds to fit the visuals and really enhances the effect of these visuals. The structure of a film is complicated and can be difficult to pin down. This becomes increasingly difficult when it comes to avant-garde and non-narrative films, as they are actively aiming to break down and separate from filmic norms present in the majority of movies. For Koyaanisqasti, this is certainly true, as in its 86-minute runtime, not one word of dialogue is uttered and not one character is established. That being said, there is one cornerstone of film structure that is very evident within Koyaanisqasti, the binary opposition. Dating back to the inception of storytelling, the binary opposition was a driving factor behind narrative structure. So, while Koyaanisqasti is essentially a non-narrative film, it does have a story to tell, the story of man versus nature, and the natural versus the unnatural. The film creates this opposition using stylistic techniques mentioned earlier. Koyaanisqasti is able to make this conflict apparent by showing and not telling the viewer. The film makes its argument that man, due to its obsession with innovation and production, has lost its way and its connection with nature. The film enforces this argument visually by juxtaposing the creations of man with what created man, nature. It shows nature as slow-moving and docile, while man and its creations seem to swiftly progress through time. The methods used in Koyaanisqasti are unconventional, but it makes the age-old conflict of man versus nature quite harrowing and visceral, as the film places the burden of finding its message on the viewer. Personally, I found this film overwhelmingly powerful, as everyone, me included, seemed to understand that the human race is in conflict with its creator, but actually witnessing it in this format makes the severity much more potent. After watching Koyaanisqasti, it's impossible not to wonder if we have gone too far, if the balance between the modern world and nature is truly obtainable, and if so, at what cost.